Good evening. Welcome to Laye&Lucy TV. I'm Lucy.
I'm Laye.
Today's guest is Professor Dr. Matthias Basedau. He will help us unpack today's subject, which is the ongoing scramble for Africa. He'll help us understand who is competing, what is at stake, and why it matters for African states. Professor Matthias is a leading political scientist in African politics and governance, known for his rigorous research in conflict, institutions, and external influence. Our conversation today centers on the ongoing scramble for Africa, and Africa finds itself at the center of global attention, where external actors are expanding their political, economic, and security presence in the continent, while many observers are terming it as modern scramble for Africa. So welcome, Professor Matthias, to Laye&Lucy TV. We are honored to have you today. Could you kindly introduce yourself briefly to our viewers?
Okay. Hello, everyone. So thank you very much. First of all, I'm very honored that you're having me. So I think you already made a fantastic introduction. So I'm not sure whether I should add anything. So actually, I think we already talked about it. I think I started around 30 years ago to study Africa more in detail. However, I would start with a disclaimer. Of course, I do not know everything. Probably I know relatively little, to be honest. But, I'm nevertheless looking forward to the conversation.
Okay. When people hear the phrase modern or ongoing scramble for Africa, what does it actually mean, and how does it differ from the 19th century scramble?
Yeah, excellent question. I think it's quite different. In the 19th century, it was about European powers, plus I think the Ottomans were also at the table, to kind of partition, Africa among them. So it was also actually meant to avoid conflict between them in a way. So they partitioned Africa among them. So, and now it's a little bit different because that's actually not the aim. What we see is that we have many actors that increase their influence, as you have already outlined. And that, of course, has a few consequences. Of course, we can't foresee the future, but I think there are some rather good consequences for Africa. We can expect there are some more problematic ones, and there is also a great, rather big risk for Africa coming from this. So I don't know whether I should outline that or whether we should.
It will be very good that you outline that,
Okay, the good thing is, competition is good for business, and in this case, it's good for African governments or Africans because there are more choices. And if their competition, the external actors, if they want to cooperate with African actors, they have to make the best offer. So African governments can choose, and they can get a better offer. So that's a good thing. And from the European view, or sometimes, especially Europeans think, oh, what are all these other actors doing? So I think just get used to it. Okay, that's it. But that's good. That's the good effect. There's something which is more problematic, because it means mainly that it will be the governments that will benefit from these, better choices for them. And then, of course, it depends on the governments, what they make of it. If you have governments that work for their countries, that work for Africa, then it's excellent. But if it's governments that may have other things in mind, like staying in power or, I don't know, getting rich, then it's not so good. So this is, let's say, a conditional effect depending on what actors do with it. So, but the risk can be that, especially for the population, there might be no benefits, or even that the situation like it is, continues. So the third one, and that's I'd say, the most worrisome effect that is possible, that rivalries between the external actors will play out in Africa. So as they will compete with, let's say, with foul play. We had it in the past during the Cold War that, for instance, Mozambique or Angola, the different sides in civil wars were supported by different external actors in the Cold War.
Yeah.
And that, of course, perpetuated these conflicts and made them more bloody. You have more examples for that. The second thing is we already have something like that going on at the moment. So, almost nobody in the world cares that much about Sudan. Well, we could talk about that too, because it's also something that requires an explanation. And in Sudan, we have different external actors, supporting the different conflict parties. For instance, I'm not a huge expert on this conflict, but what are they called? The Rapid
Support.
Support
Support
Forces.
group forces.
They get support from the United Arab Emirates, and the what is called the government has been supported, for instance, by Russia or China. Interestingly, Russian actors are kind of interested in both sides, but that's apparently a more complicated story. So, and when both parties get support, that prolongs conflict and makes them more bloody. And I think the main challenge is to, of course, on part of the external actors to refrain from such behavior, but on the part of Africans to avoid this kind of scenario.
So,
No, I was trying. You were talking about Sudan, so that conflict is ongoing on, and then so I just wonder what United Arab Emirates goal in that conflict, for example, and maybe why China and Russia goal to support the government is stay about resources or some other thing or geopolitics.
Actually, it's a good question on the United Arab Emirates. The thing is, interestingly, analyzing the situation requires knowledge, or even in-depth knowledge, of all the foreign policies of these countries, and it's actually many countries. It's not just Western countries and Russia and China. It's all these Middle Eastern countries and many more. So I do not know exactly, but I think you mentioned the natural resources, and this is, of course, something that's important for many of the actors, almost all. I think that it has been said that the Emirates, they're interested in trading gold, and gold is something that's at stake in Sudan. For China, especially Sudan, has been of interest because of oil. China was a latecomer in terms of industrialization because it only took off once they changed their economic policy. So they had economic growth. They don't have enough oil on their own, so they try to get oil supply, and Sudan is one of the cases because then production started there. Russia is a little bit, I'd say, more complicated because, for instance, they have natural resources on their own a lot, actually. There's almost
yeah,
nothing they don't have.
yeah,
At the same time, maybe that's also a quite Western view, maybe slightly paranoid, but it's also, claiming or reclaiming world relevance. So I think that's something that's driving Putin. He wants to make clear that Russia is a world power, and Africa is one of the theaters where he can claim that. And that's why they're coming back. And usually, what they are doing is they have this business model, which is we give you support for regime survival, using what then was Wagner or other stuff. And in return, we get natural resources directly or indirectly. That's been the model in a way, but at the same time, it's also to, I would use another word if we weren't on TV, but to kind of put off the West. So that's also that's for Putin obviously that's important because Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, that was a superpower, world power, and its power has decreased, and that's something that I think Putin wants to change again. So yeah, but in a nutshell, we have to look what they really want, and that's of course also varied. But with looking at natural resources, that's always, I think, a key aspect.
All right. So in today's or in the modern scramble for Africa, who is calling the shots? Because we saw in the 19th century, the German Chancellor von Bismarck, the one who organized this Berlin conference, called everyone to discuss how they are going to divide, rule, and be able to systematically extract from Africa. But in this modern scramble, where we have now new actors or new entrants, like you mentioned, China and the UAE, who is calling the shots?
Yeah, well, another great question, because obviously there hasn't been any conference that tries to settle this problem, and I think it's not very likely that it's going to happen. Again, I think I said that before. I think Otto von Bismarck. I don't want to give you a history lesson, but he wasn't interested in colonialism as such.
Yeah.
His goal was to consolidate the German Empire, which was relatively young at that time, and it's
Yes.
also squeezed between Russia and France, and this is geopolitically quite risky. And actually, it turned out to be quite risky in the two world wars. So his idea was, I have to make sure that Germany is safe. So at the same time, there was this strong movement to have colonies, because there were all these European powers, and their glory depended on having colonies, and empires and all that thing. And this was also strong in Germany, and he kind of gave in, but he was worried about that the rivalries about Africa, because this was the last piece of the world that wasn't yet, dominated by the Europeans, would cause conflict among the European powers. And then, by the way, that was the reason why they gave the Congo as a compromise, that nobody of the big powers would be disappointed. They gave it to the Belgian king, who
The
I think
Belgium.
no, it was first. It was a private property of the Belgian king, Leopold, and he probably made the worst possible out of that. Okay, we know that. So, but I don't want to go too deep into history at the moment. I think it's rather unorganized. I'm not saying that was good then, because this is obviously a crime, to just partition a territory, among each other. I mean, then I think people thought that was normal, but when we look at it today, I think it's unbelievable. But okay, at the moment there, we have a change in the world order, which rather resembles a disorder, for that matter. And that means it's unorganized, and usually change in the international system creates conflict. And there's again a little bit connected to what I said earlier, that can of course cause trouble in Africa if we have some adverse circumstances. So yeah, I wouldn't say who's calling the shots, or are you asking more in the direction of who are the most powerful actors?
Yeah, I would be interested to know who are the most powerful in terms of the geopolitics, because I have had differing opinions, but from your side, I would, and from your experience, I would like to understand who is the most powerful.
Actually, it's again a good question, but usually you say it's a good question when you don't know how to answer. This kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, but no. Then we of course have to distinguish between power potential and
Mm-hmm.
actual interest and maybe
Mm-hmm.
the strategy. So I think still the most powerful on this planet is the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Still, although
Yeah.
it's hard to tell
Mm-hmm.
what their actual interest in Africa is.
Mm-hmm.
Lately it seems there might be not that much interest. They cut all the
Mm-hmm.
aid. I
Yeah.
think I don't know whether you read this national security strategy, and they seem to be more interested in Latin America, the so-called
Yes.
Western Hemisphere, and
Yes.
also, but at the same time, I don't know whether you've, of course, we heard about that military strike in Nigeria,
In Nigeria, yes.
which apparently was kind of coordinated with the Nigerian government. At least
Mm-hmm.
that's what they say. Then they also said lately there was that the U.S. wants to re-engage with the three Sahelian governments in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
Mali and Niger, yes.
Mhm.
And of
Uh,
course, we know the presence of AFRICOM, the U.S. African Command. Yeah.
yeah, it's in Stuttgart.
Uh-huh.
And maybe we can use this as a pretext to turn back to the topic of football. What do you think?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it's a
Uh-huh.
little
No,
bit strange, but
football.
this
We
is
can take football later on.
yeah. Later on, let's do that later on.
Yes.
Okay. It's first the U.S. So, but their interest seems to be
Mm-hmm.
limited. Although
Mm-hmm.
actually,
Mm-hmm.
U.S. foreign policy always was a weird mixture of, let's say, some liberal values, both economically
Mm-hmm.
and politically, and really hard interests. And usually that
Mm-hmm.
came across a little bit as hypocrisy because it was mixed. And often,
Yes.
the talk was on values and the actions were on interest. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so but and Trump is a little bit different. He basically, I think he does what he's saying. He's actually how do you say? He's practicing what he preaches.
Yes.
Although maybe the
It's an
content
open
might
book.
be it's an open book. Although I'm not a Trumpologist, so I
Yes.
have not completely understood
Mm-hmm.
this guy. So, but okay,
Yes.
the U.S. I think in terms of economic power, number two
Mm-hmm.
is China.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, However, they have been quite hesitant, or they're not doing a lot, although their role has increased. So,
Mm-hmm.
and their role is a little bit different. It's a little bit more, okay, look, we work with you. Of course, we have our own interest. We want natural resources because we need them. In return, you
Mm-hmm.
get some infrastructure projects, but we don't ask any questions regarding you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, regarding the political system or anything. So that's actually,
Mm-hmm.
and that's maybe also the reason why for many African governments has been a quite popular and a quite interesting offer, if you will. So
Yeah.
who's third? So I would think that it's not Russia. Although we still have in mind Soviet Union, Russia, but you have
Mm-hmm.
you have to know that the gross domestic product of Russia
Yeah.
is as big as Italy.
Mm-hmm.
So, or half of the GDP of Germany.
Yeah.
So, it's not a lot. Of course, they have other advantages militarily. Of course, they have nuclear weapons. It makes a
Mm-hmm.
difference. And also, what's an advantage is they are ready to make their hands dirty in this. So
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a guy from the French Ministry, and
Yeah.
we talked about Mali, and he wasn't happy about what happened there, and he
Yeah.
said the Russians have one advantage: they don't care about casualties.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not only include the casualties of the enemy, but also civilians, and most importantly, their own.
Yeah.
They don't care. Okay, they at the same time, they are not so strong at the moment because they are very busy in Ukraine.
Yes.
And some people have said they have low investment but high impact, and we also
Yeah.
may look at how much it worked out with their model in the Sahelian states. I think it hasn't worked that well. That they really supported them. So, but then we have Europeans or West Europeans. So, okay, this is also something I have. What I think is Europe is weak and in decline, like the West on
Yeah.
the whole. So, the main thing is, of course, Europe is divided. You have
Yeah.
many different countries, and they have different interests. For instance, okay, the Brits have left the club. You know,
Yeah. The Brexit.
yeah, yeah. Okay, no, actually, I'm not happy about it. But
Yeah.
uh, at the same time, okay, that's how democracy sometimes works. Huh? Okay, so
Yes.
we have to respect that. But if you, for instance, compare France and Germany, so
Yeah.
Germany, you might be surprised by that, but Germany does not have a lot of interest in Africa. So Germany, after the Second World War, has mainly become a trading country. It's about trade, it's about exports.
Yes.
And only 2% of German exports altogether go to Africa. 2%. So
Yeah.
Asia and Eastern Europe and the US are much, much more important. So that's
Yeah.
why German Africa policy is dominated by development cooperation or development aid. So, and that's why we also have this, but usually, I don't know, you can correct me, but when you talk to people in Africa, usually they say, look, we like you much better than the French because you bring money, but you don't ask for political influence. I don't know what they say behind my back.
But, no, actually, it seemed like it is true because in some part of West Africa is like that. So, what has been going on for century, France dominance in West Africa. So some people they don't like it, and that
Yeah,
is
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah.
I think there's some truth to it, although, again, and Germans, I say that openly, we Germans, we are weird people. So we need some ethnographers coming to us, anthropologists, and studying us more in detail.
Yeah.
So what's going on with these people? Okay, but okay, no, I'm joking. And
Yes.
so in France, of course, for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the former colonial power that has kept most. How can you tell? If you talk about neo-colonialism,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
then former French colonies, that's what you talk about mainly.
Yes.
So because
Mm-hmm.
that started with how they created
Mm-hmm.
the states. They created 14 states, although I think
Mm-hmm.
before they had two larger regions, but for some reason they created 14 states. And one of the
Yeah.
reasons seemed to be that it's easier to control smaller countries. So
Mm-hmm.
and okay, we can talk about the whole France Afrique thing, that how it was called, and it has also some funny twists because Omar Bongo, the president of Gabon,
Gabon.
Of Gabon.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because he gave money, I wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
bribed, uh, all the French politicians because he gave them money for,
Mm-hmm.
for the election campaigns. And in a
Yeah.
way, it was then Gabon that was calling the shots behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes. So, but okay, but okay. We know in the last years, France actually practically has been thrown out of West Africa. Okay, maybe that's a
Yeah.
little bit exaggerated, and actually, that's a kind of a
But Professor is like much more true in it because these West African countries state they are seeing what the other are doing.
Mhm.
If one do something, the other want to replicate the same thing. It's the same politic. When we start talking about colonial power, especially France.
Yeah.
So Professor, what about Turkey? We can say Turkey is part of it or not?
Of it, you mean of the process? Oh yes, it's very
Yes.
good. You tell me. I'm of course no expert of Turkey foreign policy in general. So, you know, we, it seems to be. I remember a few years ago I was in Accra, and there's
Mm-hmm.
this huge mosque. So, and usually I get all my knowledge from asking questions to the taxi driver.
Yeah.
I
Very
will write.
informative.
I will write a methodological article on that.
Mm-hmm.
The taxi driver interview. So and
Yeah.
okay, and he said, okay, that's financed by Erdogan. That's what he said.
Mm, mm,
And
Mm-hmm.
and actually, Turkey, of course, Turkey is one of these countries that has been increasing its influence. But there are also others. We already talked about the Emirates. We have to talk about Saudi Arabia. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that
Yeah.
also, uh, we have to talk about. I don't know. In some places, Iran is an important actor. We may talk about others. So it's a whole lot of things. But Turkey, I think, is very important, and they also seem to have this idea, to regain lost glory. You know, uh, that's for some reason I find it always a little bit irrational. By the way, also on part of the Europeans, of course, this idea that you need to increase your influence in order to have this prestige and glory. But I think this is for many foreign policies. This is a this is an important motive.
Yeah, Professor. We have been talking about unipolar system, and now people are talking about multipolar system. So, what can you see Africa in the multipolar system in terms of power? For example, we have been hearing and reading recently that the United Nations has been very weak. So maybe in near future, maybe they'll be creating another United Nation, or or can we say that the United Nation up is not update? It need to be update because no African power are represented in the Security Council. The Security Council is just dominated by five countries: France, Britain,
Mm-hmm.
Russia, China, and US. Is it time now that new country can come in, like African Union, for example, representing Africa in it? Or what do you think? We would love to to hear from you.
No, actually, what I think is Germany needs to be represented. Anything else doesn't matter so much. Okay, no,
Yes.
no,
Uh-huh.
I'm
Let's
joking.
hear. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm joking, of course. So
Mm,
there may be two things. One thing is actually uh,
Mm-hmm.
Germany and Africa have a common interest in reforming the Security Council
Yes.
because Germany is not represented permanently, and so is Africa. Is also not. I think, and
Mm-hmm.
Germany generally, I think, supported, for instance, the idea of having
Mm-hmm.
a permanent seat for the African Union. Uh,
Yeah.
if you would start a competition, say we just have one specific country that will be represented, you will start a competition on which country it will be. South
Mm-hmm.
Africans will say it's of course us. Then you will
Kenyans
hear
will
the
say
Nigerian.
us.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, and that would be a model. But I think more importantly is really at the moment the United
Mm-hmm.
Nations, yeah, they are not in good shape.
Yeah.
That's maybe not so much because of the United Nations, but because of the powerful countries and the
Mm-hmm.
dynamics of the power between them. You know, is kind of ignoring what the United Nations do. Trump, he doesn't care about the United Nations. Also, other
Mm-hmm.
powerful countries like those with permanent seats and the right to veto any decision in the Security Council. Of course, if their vital interest is concerned, they just use the veto. So, and actually, that's it's a good question. In this current situation of transition from the unipolar world order to the multipolar world order, or to the total lack of world order. So yeah, it's. I think I would think it would be desirable, especially for the not so powerful countries, to have a world order that guarantees rules everybody abides to, including the most powerful ones. Unfortunately, the most powerful ones have little incentive to abide by the rules because they can afford not to abide by them. The less powerful ones cannot afford not to abide by the rules because they will be sanctioned. So
Yeah.
you leave me here a little bit without an idea. I would know what would be good,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure whether we will see that in the not so distant future.
So, Professor, um, essentially, from what I have heard from you today, is that the strategic focus of these external actors in, who are scrambling in Africa, their focus is balance of power and hegemony, as opposed to the 19th century um divide, rule, and extract. So, you asked what we Africans say behind your back, and I will tell you what we say. It's like most of these external actors are they are using development, partnership, security, humanitarian intervention, and responsibility to protect fragile states. Um, they are using that guise to exert their power or their influence in Africa. So if I were to look at partnership, because partnership by different countries, these external actors have claimed partnership. If I was to look at that, or if we were to look at that, are African government reacting to these partnerships strategically, or are they just reacting to this global competition? What do you think?
Yeah, I know it's a little bit about thinking. Actually, of course, I think at least to a certain extent, you are totally true about a certain level of hypocrisy on part of external actors. They have this big talk on development, partnership, and so on, and behind that is often just self-interest. So, and of course, that's not something we want to see. In that sense, although I don't want to appear as a ardent Trump supporter, I'm not. But so
Mhm.
he's not that guy. He's just saying what he means, for the better or
Yeah.
worse. But okay, that's a
Mhm.
side aspect to that. But
Mhm.
okay, that's and often, for instance, what I've discovered in development cooperation, or maybe you should call it aid. So
Mhm.
often, it's also still self-interest on part of those who are employed in the development cooperation, because it's a quite decent way of making a living.
Yeah.
That's, by the way, no crime. And what I
Mhm.
said in I think I'd say, interests are no crime most of the time.
Mhm.
Uh, interest or crime. First, it's completely normal that you have self-interest. You know,
Yes.
all three of us also have self-interest. I have a
Yes.
self-interest in earning money in my job or being a great professor or whatever. I don't know. I have self-interest. So everyone has it. So it's normal and it's also healthy. It becomes unhealthy and problematic when you pursue your interest on the cost, or how do you say, of
Cost of
others.
order.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the problematic part. And
Mhm.
I'd say it's good, and it's good. It would be good on the part of external actors that they say, look, we have this interest. For instance, we need these critical raw materials because they are key for our technological products or whatever. Yeah. So we are ready to pay a decent price for that. In return, you get this or that. And then, for instance, the African government said, look, that's a nice offer. However, this other guy knocked at my door yesterday and he offered more. So maybe you can think about it, or something like that. So that's, yeah, God, that's business. That's okay. It starts to become problematic once you try to grab the critical raw materials without paying or by using any other kind of foul play. Yeah, but I think that wasn't exactly your question. It was more on what you mean. What Africans should do first. I mean, they should also say, okay, this is our interest, and that's what we're
Yeah.
doing, and that's also fine. First, that's fine, and it's also knowing to play the field. It's also to know what's there beyond natural resources. One thing that works in favor of Africa is you have many countries, and for that matter, for some reason, many countries want a lot of allies worldwide.
Yes.
And that's, of course, something Africa can use. You've seen that in all these votes in the General Assembly.
Yes.
And Africa is a big bulk of countries, like 50, because that's what we're interested in. And then I think there's something, okay, African countries should also go beyond being a supplier of raw materials, because
Yes.
that's not the key to development. It can be good for development if you have a lot and manage them well. But the key origin of development is refined, manufacturing, technology, all this.
Yes.
I think that's something. It's also maybe about institutions. I don't know whether you've read this wonderful book, Why Do Nations Fail, by the
Yeah.
current, and it's also about having the right political environment. I would also think, European countries and other countries could do something, because usually, the talk in Europe is, oh, we are helping these African countries all the time. And so what people often forget is we have these subsidies
Yes.
for agrarian products. And that, of course, is not good for agrarian exports from Africa. I'm not an expert on this economic stuff. Some say there are so many exceptions, but actually we
Yeah.
have a very strong lobby of farmers in Europe, and they of course will do everything. They will fight tooth and nail to keep the subsidies. But I think that's not good. But okay, I'm a little bit ranting now. I think this, Africa will greatly benefit when it's doing more than just supplying raw materials.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree with you. And I am wondering whether our leaders, our African leaders, have the agency or are able to set the terms, because I believe they are aware that they can pull strings, but so far I don't know what happens behind those agreements and accords which these external actors, these powerful external actors, I would say, so to speak, impose on African nations. So
Yeah,
I'm left wondering whether they are able to set the terms, or is there anything else which is impeding them from setting the terms?
yeah. Well, it always depends on it's a little bit maybe so, but I'm thinking loud. It's a little bit of negotiation situation, and who has the
Yes.
better position. I think to a certain extent, at the moment, Africans have a favorable position because of the competition between the external actors.
Yes.
Although you never know, it could be also that what happened in the past. There's a reason why many African countries did not benefit as much as possible from their natural resource wealth.
Mm-hmm.
This is because they accepted unfavorable deals.
Yes.
You have it. You have a counterexample, and that actually very much shows that it would have been possible otherwise. This is
Mm-hmm.
Botswana. You know,
Yes.
they have natural resources, diamonds. Their wealth is built
Mm-hmm.
on diamonds, but they
Yeah.
managed a good deal with De Beers, this diamond giant from South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
50-50 or something. So that's one. We can of course only speculate whether there were some under the table
Mm-hmm.
payments for other governments that made them accept that, or there was other things. But I think I think at the same time, that's something I've been thinking a lot. Is one problem with political science is
Yeah.
that we only know so much,
Mm-hmm.
and there are many things going on behind the scenes we don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So actually, we don't have the protocols of cabinet meetings or of
Mm-hmm.
negotiations, what they really said. Of course, there's
Yeah.
always a risk that we start to speculate about wild conspiracies,
Mm-hmm.
and that can, of course, make us look a little bit weird if we say because we just don't know. But
Yeah.
actually, yeah. So, but generally, I think from the changing conditions at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
there are certain opportunities for African governments. Of course, it also depends on how well the cards are played, you know.
Yeah.
And there's also, we have the same situation at our institute at the moment. Our former president left a while ago, and in Germany it takes forever until the leader is replaced in the institute. And I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of waiting for redemption for for the new, how do you call it, the new leader who will solve all problems, and
Yeah.
how do you say this? How do you say that? There's a religious term for that.
Uh,
Savior?
Savior?
I don't know. So I guess your English is much better than mine. So, and, and
Yeah.
okay, you're waiting for somebody
Mhm.
who, a person who resolves all problems. So
Redeems you. A
yeah,
redeemer or a
redeems you.
savior.
Yeah. That's why you always. I'm interested. I
Yes.
studied a little bit your military coups, and you often have the National
Mm-hmm.
Redemption Council or what's
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
how they call it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so and that's also a little bit problematic because usually it's not just one person that solves all problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's more than that. So, but at the same time, I think this is very important to say. Of course, I'm I do not know perfectly what's best for Africa. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think as African, we just need to sit down and reflect and think about our own interests because
Mm-hmm.
every countries are talking about their interests first before they
Mm-hmm.
can help you. So, Professor, I have another question here. You know, we see when decolonization happened, mostly most African countries were very new that they will start governing themselves. Most of them they was not having intellectual and enough intellectual to rule themselves. So that itself lead to military coup or ethnic tension also lead also to military coup and failed state. So I just wondering, yeah, is liberal value, liberal democratic value is something that Africa need to redefine and then shape it in a way that can be very good to them, or they have to follow uh, the European way of democratization, for example.
oh yeah, well, that's another good question. So actually, there's a big debate on that. So some people say, okay, this liberal democracy model, that's not useful in the African context. Others say, look, it can be adapted and has been adapted everywhere. So then to say they have this idea of the authoritarian developmental state, like Singapore, some of the Asian countries. Maybe, but only maybe, Rwanda could be an example for that. However, most African authoritarian countries were anything than like that. We have to keep that in mind. One thing I say first, of course, having democracy doesn't mean you have development, because at the end of the day, you also need a good government, and elections do not guarantee a good government.
Yes.
What's good about democracy, if you have a failing government, you can get rid of it without a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, that comes in handy, because
Yeah.
otherwise you might not get rid of them, or you have to shed a lot of blood. So that's good.
Yeah.
But okay. So the other thing is democracy. Is it a fit for Africa? So first, I think also in Europe or Western countries, you have different models.
Mm-hmm.
The British model is not the same as the French model. The French model is
Mm-hmm.
not the same as the German model, and the German model is not the same as the
Swiss.
American, yeah, or whatever. So, and usually, what you can and actually maybe should do is, adapt the institutions to the needs of your country. What fits
Yeah.
with the challenges, but also with the traditions. And that has happened in all these countries I've mentioned, including Switzerland, of course. And I'll look around what works best or has similar situation. I also remember an interview with a long-standing government minister and party official in Botswana. So this is also long ago. And he said, what we basically did was, we used our traditional institutions in Botswana, and they have this thing called Khotla. I think this is a traditional meeting of elders where they sit down and
Mm-hmm.
talk and discuss and settle issues. And he said,
Mm-hmm.
we used these traditional institutions and added political parties and elections and created our own thing. So, and actually, I think one should not do copy and paste. Say, we were a former British colony. So, what we are doing, we directly import the Westminster model. I no, of course not.
Mm-hmm.
So, and actually, uh, with regard to Kenya, I think there has been a lot going on with regard, creating some institutions that might fit better. I think there's
Yeah.
something on, for instance, on the election of the president that
Mm-hmm.
requires that the president does not only win a simple majority, but at least a certain support in the bigger part of the country, in order to make
Yes.
sure that there is not divided support, but more broader support, and that
Yeah.
also the candidates have an incentive to not run on an ethnic or regional ticket only. This is maybe an
Yes.
example. So at the end, I also think that, of course, external actors should not impose any kind of political systems on Africans. They
Mm-hmm.
have to decide on that on their own. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have also I did a little bit research on political institutions, and that's why I know a little bit the Kenyan case, but also Nigeria, for instance. Actually, they have
Mm-hmm.
done a lot in order to create institutions that better fit their needs. At the beginning, they had three regions. They had this federalism of three regions, but that was actually problematic because
Yeah.
it made the rivalry between the regions very salient.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this terrible civil war then, 1967 to 1970. And that's why,
Biafra War.
yeah, exactly. And after that, first, what they were great at, there was a lot of forgiveness. They didn't try to to come after the losers, of the war. That's I think that was very key. But at the same time, they also created more federal states in order to avoid conflict. So and they have
Yeah.
done many more things. To what
Mhm.
extent that was successful is a different question. But I think each country should adapt. We also must be aware of the fact that some people criticize democracy as an import, but not because it's an import, but because they want to rule themselves without being challenged at the ballot box. So I would also be a little bit, at least with some guys, I would be a little bit skeptical.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, look, how
Mhm.
long did it take in Germany or other European countries to do over like that? So I believe the best thing is, not to impose anything. And maybe, of course, you can discuss, you can look at successful or unsuccessful cases, but it's something to figure out themselves. But generally, I still believe that it's good when you can choose your leaders, when you can freely express your opinion, when you can freely create political parties or associations rather than the other way around. I
But yeah, but sometime in Africa, majority democracy can lead to ethnic tension. You
yeah.
know, in so I think sometimes it it fractured the society much more than what it is happening, for example, in a European country. For example, in Germany, like that. So I think the German are mostly yeah, they are the only ethnics in Germany. For example, in Norway we have at least two or few. in
Mhm.
in most European countries, it's just like one or two. But in some African country like that, in Nigeria like that, so often you see the North always dominate when it become election, because most of these people are electing toward ethnic line. So I think that is one of our problems. So do you have any advice about it?
Yeah, yeah. It's of course right. I think it would be dangerous to say you just have democracy and then everything's great, because that's rather when the work starts rather
Mhm.
than is over. And there are also, of course, risks. And there is, of course, a risk that once you have election and all the politicians run on an ethnic ticket, or all the voters vote ethnically, then you have maybe elections becoming a problem. But then you might have some ideas on how to avoid that. One thing is that what we've talked about that is more technical. This is this idea of having this territorial quotas. That
Mhm.
means in order to win an election, you must also include other ethnic groups. You can have also, you can have more of a consensus-oriented democracy rather than a majority-oriented democracy. So usually people say, let's go for proportional representation rather
Mhm.
than first past the post. I think
Mhm.
that's still in place in Liberia and Kenya, right?
Mhm.
Oh no, I'm not sure about Liberia. I used to be an
No,
electoral systems expert.
no, Liberia is just like a majority,
Yes,
if you
majority.
win. So,
But the problem is if you have this winner takes all. I call it the ABBA effect.
Mhm.
I don't know whether you know the song. I'm not a huge ABBA
Yeah.
fan, but I know that one. And um, winner takes it all. That means if the winner takes all, then the loser loses everything. And that's, of course,
Yes.
not the best recipe. So
Mhm.
if you have proportional representation, usually the problem might be you don't have strong majorities, but you have a need for building a coalition. And a coalition is more inclusive.
Yes.
And that's, for instance, the I don't want to praise Germany too much because at the moment I think the system is not working. You see me angry again. But it's more consensus oriented. Would you? I think at the beginning we had maybe one government that had an absolute majority. Otherwise, we always have coalitions. At the moment, it's even too much because the coalitions, the partners, they don't really get along, and that also, creates a lot of headache. But you have different options. So, and yeah, but at the end of the day, it depends of course, also on the countries. We could also, of course, talk on Rwanda because actually a lot of things work in Rwanda. We must admit that.
Yes.
So they get things done. They get things done. They have quite a bit of growth. I haven't followed that in detail. That a bit of growth is also they also include a lot of women in business and many other things. So, however, we also must consider what happens once Paul Kagame is out of office. At some point it will happen.
Yes.
And what happens then? So it's, I don't know whether you remember Yugoslavia.
Tito?
They had Tito, and it seemed to be that, these tensions between the ethnic groups, were over. But he died, and 10 years later, we had that most terrible slaughter in Europe since the Second World War. So it wasn't over. So, and we don't know what will happen once Paul Kagame is gone. So we don't know that. We have maybe also, you can also look to Asia. You can look to countries like Taiwan and South Korea. They started as rather military dictatorships and started their development then, and then gradually became more democratic. I don't know whether this is also a model that may work. It's so I would, okay, I'm a little bit biased in favor of democracy, and we should also consider, that it's about if you dislike colonialism for a good reason because it's people telling others what they have to do, then you also must question authoritarian government because that's on a more abstract level the same thing, just within a country. So, and
does that? Sorry, Professor. Does that also mean that you should question the liberal democratic system? Because I am biased negatively towards the democratic system because I believe they were imposed on Africans. And as Laye said, that during that time that most African countries were gaining independence, they, so to speak, inherited the authoritarianism of the colonial master. You found most governments working under the vestiges of the colonial master. And you find also that the colonial master mostly influencing the politics and also the economies of these colonial governments to date. Like you find the British funding or pulling some strings on who is their favorite in terms of the presidential candidate in Kenya, French proposing who should be the ideal leader of some West African country. So yes, we inherited that authoritarianism of the colonial master, and democracy was written by the pen of the colonial master. So we didn't get a time to, as Africans, to write or to propose what we wanted. And I think it works for Rwanda because, unfortunately, after the war, they had a time to introspect and think about themselves and probably fashion something which is homegrown. I think that is why it's working. But then the question comes, what happens after the exit of the current president. So that's what we are all preoccupied about. So I also wonder. Sorry, go on, Professor.
No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. No, I've talked a lot, so I should not, I should not do that. So, no. Actually, it's not like I do not know what's best. So, no, and actually, as
Mhm,
somebody who has studied institutions, including democracy and other and more technical elements of it, so I
yeah.
know that often people also uh, overestimate the role of the institutional setup. They think they just need to have the perfect system and then
Mhm,
everything works out itself. And of course it doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's
mhm.
about people.
Yes.
The best system doesn't work with not so good people. So so that's why it's not only about institutions; it's also about the people in the institutions.
Mhm,
That's the first thing. Second, I fully agree that that the African nations, they should develop their own thing. And I can also understand the skepticism towards the European style institutions, because they are kind of, can I say so, contaminated with a flavor, the smell, the stench of colonialism. Yeah.
mm.
At the
yeah,
same
totally
time,
right. Mhm.
at the same time, do Africans not want to have a say who rules them? Or do you
We
want do you
do.
want do you want your countries to be ruled by some dictator who doesn't give a give a thing about what the people want? Do
No,
you want that?
no, I think is a lot of things need to be do in Africa. So we just need to sit down and think what we really want. Yeah, and then everybody need to be represented when we are talking about it, because if few people rule, so we will have dictatorship, and also we can also have dictatorship when majority rule. So the best solution would be we study from different angle of the globe and then sit down and develop what is necessary, what is best for each society. For example, the democratic system in Liberia or election system in Liberia must not be the same in Nigeria, for example, because they have two different way and two different model. So, Professor, it's almost 1 hour now, so
Yes, we should
the
be
talk is
winding
so
up.
good.
We should be winding up. And as we wind up, I will ask you to project the future, Professor, based on your research and looking forward 10 or 20 years to come. Do you think Africa may emerge stronger in this global competition, which we are calling the scramble for Africa, the modern scramble for Africa, or will it be more fragmented by the power exerted by these external actors?
So, okay, thank you. First of all, I have to tell you, this morning my crystal ball broke.
Mm-hmm. That's quite sad. That's quite sad.
It's very sad,
Yeah.
it's very sad, and it directly fell on my dog that
Oh la
died
la.
because of it. No, okay, no, what I'm telling you. So that's I should be serious. Uh, no,
Mm-hmm.
what I meant by this little joke with a crystal
Mm-hmm.
ball is, it's of course
Yeah.
difficult to predict the future, and I do not
Yes.
possess these cognitive powers to foresee the future.
Mm-hmm.
I do not.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about some favorable conditions. We talked about some risks, and I'm
Yes.
an optimist also because if you have a
Mm-hmm.
closer look, many things in Africa also have improved, despite
Yes.
the constant negative talk on Africa. So the
Mm-hmm.
numbers are clear on that. So,
Mm-hmm.
however, of course, we say progress is a snail. You know, it's not
Mm-hmm.
fast but steady. And I remain an optimist. Part on that, and I am confident that in the long run things will turn out much better for Africa.
Okay. Final. What question, Laye?
No, I don't have a question. I just hoping and asking Professor if near future we ask him again.
Yeah. No. I actually, I don't know whether you noticed it, but I enjoyed it. I hope I
Yeah.
didn't say too much stupid stuff. A little
No,
bit,
no.
yes,
Mm.
but no, I enjoyed it, and I would be delighted to talk again. So you can also actually, I very much enjoy when people push against what I say. So I like that
Mhm,
actually.
Mhm.
I enjoy a good, and no, it's also no, it's also
mhm,
good for actually advancing
mhm.
knowledge because if your views are
Yeah.
challenged, you either
Mhm,
find better arguments for your views, or,
mhm.
which is outrageous, you change your mind,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
is I think called learning. So yes,
Mhm,
and of course you also have to reflect on your own biases, and of course I have them.
mm.
So, and
Thanks.
it's true. So no, this was great. So
Mm.
uh, yeah, I liked it. So and sorry
Okay.
for being too emotional about football. So
No,
that's the
we
only.
like it. We like it. We are all fans
No,
of
no.
football in our different
Hopefully,
spaces.
Stuttgart will win Bundesliga soon.
Uh, we have to say,
Okay.
I wish your words in God's ear.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So to wind up, I believe that the active non-alignment of Africa, uh, based on these very many suitors we have from these powers who are scrambling in Africa, if we use this properly, this active non-alignment, and
Mhm.
be able to strategically push forward our interests, we'll be able to gain in this scramble, and it will act positively in Africans' favor. So whether we have that political will, that is what I don't know. But we will look we will look in the future and probably have another discussion with you, Professor, in the future to dissect what happens or what will happen in the near future. So to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed our discussion with the professor, like, share, and leave a comment. And we will see you in our next discussion. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.